you doing, Lex?
Hey, Carlie, I am doing well. We are recording virtually today, which is nice since you're not breathing all on my neck.
You know you miss it, rubbing on my legs.
Right. Oh, whoa. I said right before you said what you said, because I thought you was going to say you rubbing on my legs, but you just be all in my ear whispering extra stuff so they don't hear out the mic.
And she be caressing my legs, y'all. Okay. Just letting you know, these are the workplace hazards of Carlie's couch.
You be tickling my ankle with your toes under the desk.
She likes it, though. Anyways.
Yeah, how extreme can we get in the intro?
Y'all know what y'all tuning in for today.
Popcorn.
Carlie's Couch After Dark.
After dark. Yo, one day we should have a Carlie's Couch After Dark. That's what we should name the when we do a sex episode, if we ever do one. Then we should name it that.
I think we will. And it will be called that. It'll be our highest viewed episode.
That's so funny. Like everybody, it could be a live episode too. Like everybody wear your Fenty or your mantis. Come on, hop in.
Yo, Savage Fenty. Yeah, mantis. I like it.
Right. We could do the Zoom where everybody's on the side. Because with YouTube, when you go live, you can't see them, but they just talk. But maybe we can use a Zoom and do a live one.
I like that. Kind of like interviews.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
glad that we're still able to podcast, even though we are in two different places today. I'm the guest, I guess. I'm calling in.
Yeah, shout out to technology. I'm actually really proud of us, like even through the pandemic, how consistent we've been. 115 episodes in person. This is our first one apart. I'm only, partially sad. Still get to see Lex, so that's cool. So shout out to that. If you do want to join us on the Bouch, we are open for questions and topics and comments or feedback, thoughts. You can call us at 323-505-2030. Leave us a voicemail, let us know, and then we'll after, listening to it, and if it's, okay, because some of y'all be wilding, then we can post it. And we'll play it in an episode and give you some feedback.
Yeah, and give us a call and leave a voicemail because we only had one phone. I believe Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
But we only had one so far, so that was kind of cool. So I do want you guys to call us. I was looking at our reviews also. We need you to leave us some reviews, but I'm glad for the ones we have. We have like 96 ratings, and we still at a 5.0. So give us 5 stars. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a little note that we can read.
Yeah, we appreciate you and all the support. People have been responding and sending things, holding us accountable whenever we accidentally post with a little metronome beating in the background. All of those things. We appreciate you. But
yeah, like, damn, y'all suck. y'all think clicking too much. Like, damn, bro, my bad. Let me fix it real quick.
You know what's so funny is that's the text you got. The one I got was, hey, I think there's something wrong with the sound on the podcast.
Right, yeah. And then your people were just like, this is a great episode. They lied to you. They ain't even listen to it. And mom was like, damn, that's it.
Damn. Like, okay. Well, after you fixed it, shout out to Jay, of course, as always. He was like, yeah, something's wrong with the sound. And then later he hit me like, oh, okay, it was fixed.
Yeah, happened there real quick. But thank you, because sometimes I'll be doing it without listening to it. So,
well, here we are.
Just trying to add the intro and the outro.
Ding, ding.
Alas. This week, so we have a great topic that Carlie thought about, and we're going to talk about rejection. I got to stop moving back and forth. We got to talk about rejection and how that impacts you, why it impacts you, and how to deal with it, because we've all been rejected at one point or another in a million different ways. And so I'm hoping that we can come up with some stories and things as well throughout this. But Carlie, how would you describe what rejection feels like?
Ooh, man, rejection. And granted, it can vary depending on if it's like a person that you really like or a job or whatever. But it kind of feels like, to me, in the past, it's kind of felt like, damn, am I not good enough? Like it kind of can lead to a trickle of like questioning yourself. And can make you be like, damn, am I not as popping as I thought I was? Like it kind of, I guess all of that to say, it kind of makes you feel like you're questioning yourself a little bit. It can. That's like on the extreme end of like what it can feel like. Like, damn, what happened? Like, especially I think about, I laugh in business school. whenever you apply for all these jobs, like a lot of times they don't even reply back. There's no, there's no nothing. It's just kind of like crickets. And it's like,
when you get like the crickets, like them not replying back, does that feel like rejection to you? Or is that the same feeling as if you were to get the, hey, sorry, we didn't choose you?
it's like, dang, y'all don't even respect me enough to reply back. And that's granted, like, I know that they probably get a million applications, and hindsight and perspective is always 2020 afterwards. But when you first get into that pool and, I guess, level up in certain areas and are aiming higher and realizing that, like, man, you aren't guaranteed to get a response back. Like, dang, I'm not even worth a response. Like, that was at first when it was in business school. After that, it was like, oh, okay, whatever. Y'all not gonna email me back. Cool. It's better than getting like one where you can tell they just copy and paste. Thanks for your application. Like, get out of here. So it just really depends on what it is. How does rejection feel for you?
I would describe the feeling of rejection as like a pain, like pain in my chest, like a sinking feeling, like disappointment. Yeah, I think about things like heartbreak feelings. Like, to me, when I think about rejection, that's what it feels like to me, like a sinking deep, like feeling in your chest, which is interesting because there is actually a link between rejection and physical pain. And studies show that it literally has the exact same effect on you, that when you're rejected or when there's like a social pain, what they can call it, your body is literally reacting as if it's physical pain. And to that, I think there was a study that I saw that I thought was interesting where they said that people who took Tylenol before reliving like a story of rejection versus people who took like the placebo, the sugar pill, they said that they recounted it much less painfully, much less like intense. And so a lot of studies even show that like it literally is like manifested as pain in your body. And also that you can relive rejection more vividly than reliving pain. Like if you've ever like broken your arm or like did something, like when you think back on it, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I broke my arm. But you could think back about when somebody dumped you or you didn't get into that club and it like actually hurts more even when you're thinking about it. So those things are very interesting to me. And it makes me feel like, it's really important to understand how to deal with rejection because you're literally putting your body through like this intense kind of pain and this intense like feelings that probably aren't so healthy to like always relive or to harp on, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I love studies like that. I nerd out over the body and think about metaphysical anatomy.
Can you say that again? Because it went in and out.
I said, I love studies like that, linking like thoughts and feelings and like seemingly like ethereal, like spiritual things with physical, because metaphysical anatomy is real, like how we carry stress, how we react to fear, how we react to pain. Like humans are the only animals that can relive scenarios time and time again. Like you mentioned, people recounting their experiences with pain and feeling it worse. Like, like when you rethink about those things, you can feel your chest drop, like your heart drop a little bit, and your stomach, you can get a knot in it, and nothing is physically happening to you. So it's so interesting. I'm definitely going to have to read that and look that up. Why do you think that rejection feels so intense or has that effect on people?
I think because we all have a very strong need to belong. We're social animals. And also because we have the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. Like, oh man, I'm so smart. Oh man, here's this rejection letter to this college. So it's like, maybe I'm not, I don't know. But I think that it's just kind of, that's where, like when you said, the way you think about it, like you can start to question yourself. And so I think that it feels so strongly because now you're making it where the narratives don't match in real life. And so you have like this weird thing of trying to figure out, well, what's the truth?
Absolutely.
What about you? Why do you think that rejection feels so strong?
Because people build, like the narratives, people build themselves up for things or get excited about things, and it's kind of like a disappointment or a letdown. It's like, oh man, we going to the movies this weekend or whatever. Even like all these plans, thinking about it with the pandemic, like even with all these plans, like, oh, I'm gonna travel here and here and here and here. And it's like, now, nah, you're not. You gonna be at home. It's like, damn, kind of like it's linking with that disappointment. So it's like you have this buildup of excitement or confidence or that like for that person or, the admiration, like, oh, my family's going to be so proud. Whatever the thing is, you have this association with it, and then it doesn't pan out the way you think it does. And it kind of like all of that tips the opposite way on the scale.
And then so you started mentioning, and we both started to kind of mention some examples of like how you can get rejected. But like, what does rejection look like? Like you mentioned, like the letter that's like, oh, sorry, you didn't get this job. I think that's one thing. Like just straight up being told, like, yeah, you ain't get it, or no, you can't get in, or whatever.
Another one is, it's not you, it's me. In relationships, like people being like you thinking that there's a longer term, whether it's a friendship, but primarily in romantic relationships, right? Like you foresee it going longer, or you want it to be, or you really think you have this connection with somebody. And then they're like, nah, dog, I'm good.
Yeah, but I disagree on part of that context because it's not you, it's me. Is actually, I think, pretty fair that a lot of times rejection might not be about you.
Valid.
And that it is kind of about the person in some ways, but also that is for sure rejection. What you said at the end too, to be like, hey, yeah, sorry, like, this isn't going to work. I don't want to move forward with this. That is a rejection. I would say another form of rejection is abandonment. If perhaps, or maybe you view that as rejection. So think about as a child, maybe if your parents are not there, or whether they just had to work a lot, or whether they left the home, that can feel like they rejected you.
And that's a real thing. I have dealt with like letting go of those feelings, whether your parents work a lot or whether you're like working for their constantly working for their approval. Like you would just want them to be proud of you. Like I feel like a lot of people seek that in their parents, and that inspires a lot of things that they're doing. And so if they don't celebrate you in the ways that you want them to, or that you think, like that could also feel like rejection, like not getting the response that you want.
And also, just being ignored. So I think about things like the movie Mean Girls, which I haven't really seen, but I know enough about like that scenario of, like, and this is in every damn high school or college movie where it's like you're in the cafeteria or whatever, and you're trying to figure out which table you could sit at, and people looking at you silly. And that, I think that feels like rejection and or kind of the fear of it, which I don't know if those are two separate things. I think sometimes the fear of rejection can hurt us more than actually getting rejected, because that's a whole, different other side of it as well.
Yeah. In researching for this episode, there is actually a word for the fear of rejection that keeps people from doing things. And it is different, and it can be worse. Like it can be paralyzing and keeping you from actually going for opportunities. I think the most blatant way rejection looks is people saying no. Like if you ask somebody for help for something, or if you ask somebody on a date, or like we already talked about jobs, like people just saying no. And they could be really kind, like, oh, I'm focusing on myself right now, or actually we filled the position, but you were the second candidate in line, whatever. It's still rejection.
Yeah, but I think the rejection that hurts most is, and maybe it was spoken, but I think sometimes that unspoken, something you said earlier, like when you had expectations for something to happen, and or you was hoping something would happen, and then it's like, oh, they actually don't want to do this thing, or they don't want to go, or they don't. So maybe we're saying the same thing also too, because they could have said no, but I think it hurts more when you are really like, the more your expectation is tied up into it. And so that being said, is it a way to not feel rejected in life? Like, is there something you feel like you can do to never feel like you're being rejected? Or is that maybe the wrong question?
I think it's a relevant question. I don't know if it's the question, but I think there is a way to help with not feeling rejected, or like ways where it won't impact you as much. And that is enlightenment, essentially, like not being attached to outcomes and knowing that everything happens for a reason. Yeah. So detachment.
Like an opposite of like you can't feel rejected if you're not attached to things.
Exactly.
Is that true?
I think so, because if we put any of those scenarios, like, man, I really like this person, and if it works out, that's great. And if it's not, I know that everything's going to work out regardless. Or this job, right? Like, you know that these doors close for other things to open. And if you're constantly telling yourself that, and you live in this world where everything happens as it should, and you're not attached to it looking a certain way, I think rejection is whatever.
You got to be super enlightened though for that to be a real thing. So we're going to keep it real and be like, hey, so like rejection is going to happen for sure. And, it can come from everything and everybody. Like it can come from your parents, from your family, from your friends, like romantic and or whatever they're trying to be partners, from places like people who, if you didn't get into the sorority or fraternity, or if you didn't get into some group, if you didn't make the team, things like that, I think feel like rejection. Jobs, like, it's like any decision you can make that may feel important and may not feel important. It could come with rejection. And so I feel like there's a lot of people who view things through that lens, and maybe, trying not to is a key, like not looking at it as far as like, that it might not happen or that this may not go the way you want it to go. But I'm getting a little ahead because I know we're going to talk about ways to deal with rejection. Do you think it's possible to reject yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think
and it feel the same way as like somebody else though,
Yes. The first thing that came to mind was whenever you aren't good with your boundaries or honoring what you need or what you want, you're letting yourself down. And in the same way, like it could kind of feel like somebody abandoning you or not honoring you. Like for me, I felt that before in the past, like before I had good boundaries, I would always and was people pleasing, would always put people's stuff before mine. And at the end of the day would feel kind of sad and let down and unappreciated. But mostly it was because I wasn't doing that for myself. And it was like, in a sense, I'm rejecting like my wants and my needs. So I think for me, the action might not be directly me being like, nope, fuck you. But like at the same time, the feelings could be the very much the same.
That's what you be saying though.
When you're not doing those things, it is really what you're saying. So yeah, I think you can. That's like one example. Can you think of any other ones, like ways you could reject yourself?
Maybe but something that comes to mind outside of what you said, which I think is one of the bigger things. I think another thing may be, for example, like with your sexuality, if you are denying yourself for what you feel like you are or who you feel like you want to be with, because of other pressures or societal norms, things like that. That's kind of something I'm thinking about. I just watched this movie a few days ago called, I believe it's called Uncle Frank, or My Uncle Frank. And the guy in the movie, the main character, have you heard of it?
I saw the preview.
Okay, yeah, you should watch it. It was real good. But the main character is, I think he's like 40 something or 30 something, 7 or something. Like he's older, but it's like his whole family doesn't know, about his sexual preference. And he's literally been like living in this like shell because, he's kind of rejecting himself. And also, in some of the flashbacks, and this doesn't really like ruin it or anything, but in some of the flashbacks, he kind of shows like his first like guy when he was like 16 that he was kind of into. And he fought the boy because he was like, you don't want to be gay. Like, you shouldn't be gay. We're going to go to hell. So, like, because his dad, like, expressed that to him in that way, he, like, almost like he was rejecting the other guy and rejecting himself, like, in the same way, even though that's, like, what he felt and what he was. It was very interesting. So I think that could be something where it's, like, you're repressing what you want or what you need, like, in a way like that. Is definitely rejecting yourself. You're not even giving yourself the space to be who you want to be at all.
Yeah, that's a good one. And not honoring your wants and needs and desires. Another one that came top of mind, especially like working like in health and wellness, is not accepting your body.
Oh yeah.
Not accepting your body.
I'm sorry, y'all. If you're watching the video, like, yeah, there's a damn dog and he's like She rather is trying her hardest to play with me and trying to focus.
You're rejecting her right now.
Wow, but I'm not. I'm fake playing with her on the low. She don't want to feel rejection though.
Exactly.
That's another thing too. You know, when you like yell at a dog and you're like, go sit down, and then their ears go down and they look all rejected. It's so sad.
It is. But yeah, people rejecting their bodies and not, thinking that they're beautiful or they're enough or whatever because of society standards. So
what does that look like though, to reject your body?
To constantly hate yourself, to
like if you go under the knife or something.
Yeah, well, sometimes I think that could be it. I don't think everybody who goes under the knife is, but it definitely could be a symptom. But people who have like body dysmorphia and like hate themselves and go into like eating disorders and things like that.
Or if you face tuning your whole
if you face tuning your whole life.
Image.
I didn't even know that was that big of a thing until recently. But
well, I think most people will put their pictures through a little razzle dazzle, like here and there, thing cool. But then it's like, damn, like you're a whole different person in this photo, like as if there's not other photos of you that exist, but
or real life where people see you.
Yeah, which is so interesting. So what is the impact though? Like if you've been rejected and or if you're dealing with the fear of rejection, how does that impact your life? Like, how are you moving differently? How are you moving if that's your thing?
If you are scared of rejection, you will always play it safe. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but the fear of rejection can be so paralyzing that you don't even take risks. Like you never shoot that shot. Whatever it is, you're like, nah, I'd rather just be here and be safe. But that's so limiting. So you're limiting yourself.
Yeah. I think also you limit yourself by not trusting people as much. So maybe, especially if maybe rejection you've experienced is like abandonment or, people saying no to you, then you may not trust people or their intentions or that they would be for you or champion you. And so you don't, to what you're saying, like you don't ask people things or you don't try to work with people in a certain way. And I think the biggest thing though is that if you're moving from a place of like fear of rejection, then you are essentially spending more time doing things. God, sorry. I'm like that guy on that Zoom that one time where his kids came in the room. I'm like, sorry.
Y'all aren't watching the video. You should.
Sorry. What the hell was I talking about? Oh, and I think you'll just spend more time trying to be accepted, whether that's like you want to dress a certain way or, do your hair a certain way, your makeup, you know what I mean? Like you're just going to try harder to be a certain thing or like fit into a certain thing that you think is what, it should be.
And I think the scariest part about that is your fear of rejection could cause you to lose yourself, because if you are trying to be what everybody wants you to be or what you think is more palatable or more acceptable or more successful, like who are you? Like how do you want to dress? How do you want to show up? What are your passions? Like you see a lot of people get...
So that's the thing too. Maybe you'll be a people pleaser.
You'll be a people pleaser. Like you see a lot of people get into careers like, oh, well, my parents said I had to be an engineer or a doctor, so here I am. And it's like, but you really wanted to be an artist. And we could be missing out on, some fire ass paintings or beats or whatever because you felt like you had to be this and you rejected yourself.
I think you're about an example like that. It's super deep because you may not want to be rejected by your family for not doing a certain thing, or you're putting yourself in a space where if you were to get rejected from like John Hopkins or whatever those schools are or programs or internships, you may internalize that or you may like struggle with that even more because there's so much pressure on it. I think another thing is though that could be good, it could be bad, but it could be good is like, let's say you get rejected from a class or a group or a school, maybe that would make you want to improve and study more or do a better job, focus more on your work or your homework or, in whatever areas. So that could be an impact is that maybe it drives you to improve. I think perhaps there's something to be said about whatever your mental state and or like is important to you determines like if you're going to look at rejection a certain way and look at it as an opportunity to get better and do more, or if you want to use it as a reason to prove to yourself that you're not shit. So, really it's kind of perspective.
I think everything always comes back down to perspective. And as before, it always is 2020 in hindsight. But let's be real. We've all been rejected because like sometimes justly, sometimes unjustly, regardless for whatever reason. But sometimes you do have to step your game up. So it can be a positive thing, like you said, but also it can go kick you into this drive if you have this perspective of not sure if you're enough. Like, oh man, I didn't get that job. That must mean that I suck. And then you start just like this negative spiral, like downhill of like focusing on everything that's wrong with you or perceivably wrong with you. And it really not be that big of a deal. But now you're internalizing these rejections, which I think is one of the biggest things, is internalizing it and realizing that it's not a reflection of who you are as a person. Unless you just need to do a lot of self-work and you can be honest with yourself.
Unless it is.
That's why I'm like, yeah, unless it is. But
it might be.
Yeah, in which case, go get better and work on yourself and do all that. But if not, sometimes like you don't, it's not that deep.
Yeah, like you didn't make the team. You might need to get out there and do some
hire a coach. Like it is what it is. But like, so sometimes you actually need it. Sometimes I think rejection is absolutely necessary. But when it happens, if you know you're doing the work, like don't internalize it. Just let it roll off your back and keep it moving.
Okay, so then to wrap this kind of out, what are healthy ways to deal with rejection when it happens?
I would say to give yourself time to process. Don't act like the feelings aren't there, because that does not help you process them. Give yourself space to feel disappointed. Give yourself time to feel sad. If you want to cry, give yourself a little bit of time to cry, or journal, do whatever like self-care routine things you need to help yourself honor and process those emotions, and then release them and keep it moving.
One thing I saw that I didn't get at first, but I had to read about it, was that they said treat it as a physical pain. And I guess that kind of goes back to the first things I said, but they said just because if you pay attention to it in that way, like, okay, this is like a hurt for real and not as some like meta thing, that just people who focus on it more so in that way can point on the actual like solutions and dealing with it, and instead of acting like it's kind of not like a thing, or not just like internalizing it. Because like if you were hurt, like, you know what I mean? You have to pay attention to it. You have to do something with it.
Oh, I like that. So it's kind of like a sprained ankle. You're not going to act like that doesn't exist. You're going to rest it and ice it and love on it. Yeah. I think that's a brilliant idea. Focus on what you do have, gratitude, always coming back to that. It's like, okay, man, you know, I missed out, or I feel like I missed out on this opportunity, but I'm alive, which is like, okay, yeah, Carlie, whatever, we're all alive. Okay, cool. But not everybody is. And so shout out to that. And that's not saying you can't be disappointed, but that's saying I'm disappointed and I'm also grateful for all of these things that I do have. So just redirecting that energy, which I know people are like, oh, well, that doesn't make it feel better. No, but it does help put things in perspective sometimes. Like, okay, yeah, that relationship might have failed. And there are also 7 billion people in the world.
Right. And in the same vein, I think with rejection, it mostly like it bruises your ego. And so sometimes you can just spend some time hyping yourself up. Like we talked about how a lot of times you spend time in a place of like self-doubt and all that, but it takes a minute to like hype yourself up. Like, what are you great at? How awesome are you? And think about those things.
Yo, hype yourself up. And if you don't, call a friend to hype you up. Like, yo, I just need you. So I've actually done that before when I was like really struggling, not with necessarily rejection. Really? But yeah, I was having a bad day. I called one of my friends. I was like, hey, I just need you to remind me who I am for a moment, because I am like in a rabbit hole. I need you. Gas me up. Like, yes.
But did that work? Just ask for it? Because it's like you're asking for it.
Yeah. I mean, I really needed it. I was like spiraling, and my friend like was like, what? You who came from this and this? Like, you know, they hit me. I was hyped. I was hyped. It didn't like, it got me out of the rabbit hole. It didn't fix anything, but it did get me out of the rabbit hole and gave me a moment, and it like allowed me to feel supported and seen, which I think is something that can be very helpful. And with that vein,
that's on our list too.
If I say, yeah, get around people who value you. Who love you, who will support you even in those moments.
Stop trying to sit at the cool people table at lunch and find the people that fuck with you.
Because they the coolest people around, to be real.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be around you.
There we go. How about that?
That's because they don't know what they're missing though at the other spot. Another thing is like actually examining your role in it. And we've mentioned this and we kind of alluded to this. Like, you know, if you ain't been practicing your jump shot, like, sorry, you didn't make the team. So being realistic about, you know, what you contributed and what you can do. to prevent this from happening again.
Absolutely. And one of the last ones, the most important, is watch that negative self-talk and that narrative of whatever's going on. Like that goes to internalizing what happened, or, man, I'm weak, this and this and this, which you might be, in which case you can get better, but don't decimate yourself.
Which you might be.
I mean, which is a real thing. We've all had to have that conversation with ourselves. Like, yo, I need to get my life together. But you can't like beat yourself up constantly, because you can never get better if you're constantly breaking yourself down. You can have that real conversation with yourself. Like, yo, I suck today. I need to do better tomorrow, without like completely demolishing yourself. So just noticing where that negative self-talk narrative is going. And if you need some extra thoughts or how to do that, we have a whole episode on how to work with that negative voice inside of your head. Shout out to Jay.
Mm-hmm. What is, if you could think of anything, can you think of like one of the biggest like rejections you feel like you've experienced?
Oh man, I have a lot. Which area of my life would you like to hear?
I was about to say, yeah, probably it's a little something different in a bunch of different areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember not getting like a promotion when I was like the only one who was, and then they hired this old lady just because she'd been like there for longer. But I'm like, then she sucked. And then they kept trying to ask me questions. I was like, oh, nah, y'all good.
Nah.
Y'all good on there, right?
You made your decision. You're like Thanos. It brought you back to me.
Yeah, I just thought about that one. But it just made me feel valued also. So maybe going back to the first question, like, how does it feel? Like people aren't seeing you, or they're not recognizing you also. I ain't been rejected by no, I was about to call him something else. I don't think I've been rejected by no dudes per se. But I know I have. I mean, do you have anything juicy?
Like business school, I applied to 3 schools, got into 2, but my top one was like, nah, fam, we good. Okay. But I'm cool on it. It worked out. Also, let's see. I really feel like my dad and I were just having a discussion, and I don't think it's so much that he rejects me as it is that he rejects my choice in employment and like entrepreneurship. Like because he is, I'm first generation. He's from the Philippines, and
that's interesting.
He really was like, Knock, you could be an engineer. He's like, with your master's, like you could be a manager. And I'm like, what? I don't want to do that. But he's like, I just don't understand why you choose. He's like, I don't understand why you choose to struggle and do all this. Cause entrepreneurship can be a struggle sometimes, like trying to build businesses and stuff. And I'm not like, he's like, you left a good paying job to go do this. And so that's kind of like a rejection in a sense of his acceptance and him being proud of me. And I had to figure out like, first of all, why do I care? And second of all, like, dang, that kind of sucks that you don't see me, but it's cool. I told him, I said, Dad, I'm a pop. Trust me. You'll understand the vision whenever it happens, but you don't see it right now. And that's okay. So him rejecting, me and where I am. Yeah, that was a big thing for me this past week. I was like processing it. So that can be a big thing. That's a big thing for a lot of people. And it sucks so much, I think, too, to think about like that your family, even though you are family, a lot of times we don't see people like and let them be who they are, especially with family, because like you've known them since the beginning or for such a long time that it's like you're not letting them become something else in your brain, or like you're trying to hold them to a particular story. So I think a lot of people probably can identify with things like that. And so that's a big thing.
And then you want to see your kids like do well and stuff. So it's another thing too. It's like it's not coming from a crazy place, but also it's like, bro, let me live.
Yeah. And I think
you could be doing a lot of other things too.
OnlyFans. I think it's also hard for our parents' generation, whether they're, especially I would say immigrants and like people who are first generation, for them to conceptualize us doing such untraditional things, because they were raised in an era where you got a job and you held that job down and you provided for your family. You did this, and all of us are like, we moving around. We in this digital thing. We're digital nomads. We travel when we want to. We don't own homes. Shout out to student loan debt and all that stuff. But like, it's just such a different thing that I think sometimes it's so hard for them to conceptualize even like our choices, because they weren't even around when they existed. Like they were pre-technology in a sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's fair. But it sounds like you went through processing and remind yourself who you are and some of the things we're saying with how to deal with rejection. So that was a good example, to end this out on, I think. So for anybody listening, let us know if this was helpful to you, what experiences you may have had with rejection, or how you dealt with it. And again, feel free to give us a call too. Jay, who's the only one listening still, 323-505-2030, and leave us a voicemail also.
Yo, Mr. Williams is probably still listening, and
oh yeah,
we gonna have him be a
fair.
guest too. So, so if you're still listening, Mr. Williams, we're gonna be calling you soon. I think he has a lot of wisdom and things to share, especially for creating opportunities for other people. So I think that'd be really dope. So hit us about rejection. Let us know how you process or how you're working through it. Please share this with a friend. And then this week's shout out is my homeboy from business school, Brian Wong, in his company, Far Fellow Candle Company. So if you missed out on that Bath & Body Works candle sale and you're looking to support a local LA-based person of color-owned business, hit them up, Far Fellow Candle Co. We'll link everything in the episode notes. But every purchase you make will support Unite LA. It is a nonprofit org that leads collaborative education reform efforts, promotes business education partnerships, and expands college access and provides workforce development opportunities for youth in Los Angeles. So you can feel good about spending your money with a person of color, locally based in LA, and you're helping someone. So hit them up. I have 2 of their candles, and they're really, really good.
Oh, good. I need to get some more. So I'm looking at the site right now.
Yeah, that bourbon joint is fire.
Cool. And then this week's question is, what's missing in your life?
Nothing. In this moment, I'm good.
Yes, girl. I'm going to say a high credit score. I'm
going to say fuck that credit score system, but
Yeah. Actually, well, high key, yeah. But also high key, it ain't pressing me because I don't have shit to do, so it's cool. But, yeah, I would answer more money and credit if I was keeping it real on that one.
And I'm working on this whole mindset that I have everything that I need. It's all flowing to me as it should. Let's run it up, the bank account and the credit score.
That's real. That's real. If I actually sit down and get my work done. But with the holidays and stuff, like, dog, for like a week and a half there, I was acting like I ain't have a job. Like I was just like on vacation, but I'm back. I'm about to get back. Yeah, I think towards the end of the year, it gets real easy to be like,
Man, and I think everybody working from home probably makes it even more like,
Yeah, getting cold and stuff. Well, not super cold here, but kind of getting cold.
It's a little chilly.
Yeah, I would say so. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. Carlie's Couch 116, dealing with rejection, and we hope to see you next week.
Peace.